Yesterday, the Sims team did a live stream where they showed off a ton of the new content coming in both the infant update, but also in the new expansion pack. The live stream was 2.5 hours long, and they showed off so much stuff that I don't even really know how to begin to discuss it, but I've been getting so many messages asking me to make a video, like, talking about what they talked about, and I did take notes during their entire stream, so today I'm gonna try and go through some of the highlights from the stream yesterday, and what I thought were, like, the biggest standouts of new content coming to The Sims 4. Honestly, we have no time to waste, so I'm just gonna start off with the base game update. So yesterday they started off with just the base game and showed off all the things that are coming for everybody first. Obviously, this next update is going to be huge because we're getting an entire new life state in the base game now, and so alongside that, we're getting a ton of stuff to go with the infants. Obviously, like a bunch of new build items. This is kind of a few of them they showed off. There's like a new lamp, there's a couple new rugs, there's like some infant clutter, like I see like baby wipes and stuff. We're getting a new bassinet for the newborns. We haven't gotten a new bassinet in a super long time. There's also some giant llamas and like these little baskets and things like that. They also showed off these new baby gate items, and with them you can apply baby proofing to like any door or fence or anything. But probably most importantly, we're also getting a lot of new cribs. They're showing off like all of the swatches of them here. They sort of talked about how with these cribs, they tried to make them match a lot of the base game sets that we already have. In total, I'm seeing 4 cribs. This one is portable, so you can like drag it around. And this one is actually convertible. So you can like upgrade this crib and then turn it into a toddler bed so your sim can like grow up with the same bed. I have been wanting cribs, like real cribs in The Sims 4 for so long. So this to me is like a dream come true. It's also nice to have another toddler bed, and there's just so many more options for furnishing now with this pack. Aside from just build mode, there's also a ton of new gameplay updates, obviously, because we're getting a whole new life state. One of the most major things they showed off was something I didn't really expect, and it's what they're calling a science baby. So now from your phone in game, you can have your sim choose to have a science baby. You can do it with somebody or do it as a single parent, and you can basically pay money to like have a baby that is genetically related to you. And you don't actually have to be romantically involved to have a science baby with someone. As long as you have some relationship, you can. Like, you can't just have a baby with anybody. But Eliza is friends with Bella, so they can have one together. This is a really great feature because now there's so many more ways for Sims to have kids. Think like maybe an IVF story or a surrogacy story, like maybe a same-sex couple having a baby. And there's not actually any pregnancy involved with this. That's kind of the difference. So if they have a science baby, they just go off and have the science baby and then it comes back immediately. It's kind of like magic, like you just pay for it and then the baby comes, but I mean, that's the power of science. It is possible to have twins this way, and I don't think that you can influence that. It's just random chance, and it costs 1,200 simoleons, so just a little bit more than adoption. They're also making a few updates to what they're calling newborns now in this update. The newborns are the babies that we have right now, the bassinet babies, but they've changed them a tiny bit to get ready for infants. It's kind of blurry, so I couldn't see that well, but apparently they've updated the babies to look a little bit younger, like more like actual newborns. They also finally made it so newborns have the full range of skin tones. Up until now, the babies just had 3 skin tones, so now they finally have all of them, so they actually look like their parents. They also have the correct genetic eye color now. I guess before they just all had brown eyes, but now it's gonna actually show their eye color. They also apparently smoothed out the animations with babies now, so before, if you wanted to do like multiple interactions, you would pick the baby up, cuddle it, put it down, pick it up again, feed it, put it down, but they changed it so now you can just keep doing all those things while you're holding the baby. And I don't remember at what point in the stream they showed this, but you can also set a feeding preference now for both babies and infants. And what that means is you can choose like, oh, my preference is to breastfeed or to bottle feed, and then it'll just autonomously do that instead of making you pick a different one each time. And perhaps the worst thing they changed, honestly, I am like devastated by this, is they made it so babies react to weather now. So if you wanted to like leave the baby in the front yard because they're crying so annoying and you don't want to hear it, you can't because they'll get upset if it's snowing. Who asked for this? Why would you change this? Okay, obviously I am joking. It is actually kind of cool how they changed that, but it's one of those things that was kind of a nice feature. The fact that babies didn't care if you left them outside. But that kind of leads us into infants, which is obviously the biggest part of this update. We're getting a whole new life state now. So that newborn baby just aged up into an infant, and they have done so much with these infants. Obviously, first of all, we've got 6 new traits for them. They can be cautious, sensitive, calm, intense, wiggly, or sunny. tummy. And these things all impact gameplay and like how the baby behaves. So for example, in the high chair, you can give the infant new foods to try, and a cautious baby might be a little bit wary of trying those new things. They didn't actually show off an intense baby, but I fear that one. That icon is a little concerning. And they also gave the example that a wiggly baby might have a hard time falling asleep. So they all sort of pose their own unique challenges. The infants are fully customizable in cast, so you can actually edit them in Create a Sim. You can change how they look if you wanted to. You can pick new outfits and stuff. They've obviously added in a bunch of new clothes for us. My favorite is this little bear onesie. I won't spend too much time showing you cast stuff because I want to get into gameplay, but there is a lot of it. Speaking of high chairs though, they said that they did some tuning to the high chair to make it a little bit less frustrating to play with. They were even joking about it, like all of our longtime simmers know how annoying the high chair can be. So apparently they tried to make some changes to make it a little bit better. This is that trying first food menu I talked about. And this is quite cool because apparently when you feed them, right now it says never tried, but after they've tried it, it'll show their reaction to it. So a baby might love one thing, but hate something else or feel unsure of it or anything like that. Also, feeding infants in the high chairs apparently isn't really like a food thing. It doesn't really fix their hunger need. They still need to be bottle or breastfed, but it's a good way to have them like explore stuff and learn about things. I guess they're adding in this new attachment thing for infants, which I don't fully understand yet, but basically the infants develop a sense of attachment as they're being cared for. And I think that there's reward traits based on their attachment and how they were cared for as little ones. So if they had a low sense of attachment as an infant, it might affect them later when they grow up because they have like a trait from it. Again, not entirely clear on how that works. I feel like I need to wait and see when the update actually comes out. But sort of a theme of this update and the pack is like having these things really affect Sims as they're growing up. So I guess that's what they're trying to do here. The infants can also interact with older kids. This is Amelia playing peekaboo with her sibling, and it seems like she does not like it. Here's some footage of them putting Amelia to sleep in the crib, and it sounds like you might have to soothe them to sleep a lot of the time. From what I've gathered, it seems like infants are going to be kind of difficult to play with. And they also apparently added some infant content across other packs if you have them. So for example, infants can pet dogs. They also, in Parenthood, made the parenting skill have some new interactions with infants. And in Nifty Knitting, they added some new infant onesies in that pack. There's a couple other huge not infant related updates. We are getting a ton of new skin details in Create a Sim. They're adding stretch marks, C-section scars, there's full body moles, and a bunch of other birthmarks. It sounds like it's gonna be a huge skin detail update. And apparently they also changed the relationship multipliers for certain age groups. So what that means is they made it so that kids have an easier time making friendships with other kids. So the green bar will basically fill up faster between children. And they talked about how it's kind of like how in real life a lot of kids make friends faster with other kids, but it's gonna be a little bit harder for kids to befriend teens because maybe like the teens are too cool to talk to them. So I'm curious to see how that impacts gameplay and like how much it changed. But I think that is everything coming in the base game update. So that'll be on March 14th, and that stuff is coming for everybody for free. And now I want to get into all of the things that are coming in the expansion pack Growing Together on March 16th. So up until this point, everything I said is free and for everyone. But now let's talk about the pack stuff. Honestly, I really do not even know where to begin with this because the live stream showed off so much stuff. Obviously, the live stream was like 2.5 hours long of constant gameplay. So if you get the chance and you're curious, I'd honestly recommend you go back and watch the whole thing. I'm gonna try and hit the highlights, at least what was a highlight to me, but you might enjoy seeing the full stream and like hearing from the gurus themselves. It's kind of interesting to hear the people who made the pack talk about what they like about it. Like, it's kind of cool to hear a person who actively designed cast discuss what their favorite cast items are. So I'm gonna link the full live stream down below. Okay, so speaking of Create a Sim, they have obviously added a ton of new clothing options into this pack. It seems like there was a big focus on adding stuff for all age groups. I mean, obviously the whole pack is like based on interactions between age groups, so it makes sense. There were a couple highlights in cast for me. The first being that they tried to make a few matching outfits. So you can see mom has this like green sweater on, and they made a couple other variants for other ages. So like this toddler has sort of a matching pattern on their sweater. There's also kind of a cute little matching dress. I just think this is so adorable. It makes me want to have my Sims take like matching family photos. There's obviously also a load of extra stuff for infants in this pack. There's some more hairs and a ton more clothes. My favorite infant item is like this little duck onesie. It is so cute. You can see it right here. I think that's why the Sim Gurus are wearing these these animal onesies is because they added this one into the game. I'll move my face cam out of the way so that you can see, but they also talked a lot about the new hairstyles they're adding because there is quite a few, and apparently they work with a real life hairstylist on these. They did that to get some advice on how to improve their hairs, but also specifically to improve their baby hair styling. And for the sake of time, I'm gonna skip ahead past the cast assets a little bit because the main point of this is the gameplay in this pack, and there's actually some of it that you can set up in Create a Sim. So the first thing is this new family dynamics feature. So when you're setting up relationships, you can obviously set like daughter, spouse, mom, whatever, but you can also set their type of relationship. Couple examples are difficult, jokesters, supportive. And what's interesting about this is that you can apparently set it in cast when you're making a new household. So when you first loaded a game and you set up a family, you make some Sims, you can set the relationship there, or in game, depending on how they're interacting, it can give you a pop-up and be like, hey, these two Sims are fighting a lot. Do they have a difficult relationship? So I guess the way you have your Sims interact with each other will impact their dynamic. There's also a close and distant dynamic, and they were describing how if two Sims are distant and they're living in the same house, they might just not go out of their way to talk to each other, when maybe two Sims that are jokesters will spend a lot of time doing funny interactions together autonomously. And the same goes for Sims that have since moved out of your household. So maybe if your Sim lived with their parents growing up but now lives out on their own, they'll still have like that close relationship with their mom, or the difficult one with their brother. And if two Sims are close, maybe mom will call more often, but if they're distant, mom will never call. Again, I'm just repeating what they said, so I don't really know how all this works yet, but this really intrigues me. I think the reason it's grayed out right now is because you have to be in cast.full edit mode to edit it, just like you would to edit like the daughter thing. But then beyond those family dynamics, there's also a compatibility system. So they've added two new likes and dislikes categories. The first is Sim characteristics, and then also conversation topics. These are things that you can set up in Create a Sim, or your Sim can earn through gameplay, just like any other preference. And it sounds like this is a way to set up what sort of Sim your Sim will get along with. So they gave the example that Ron really dislikes argumentative Sims, but he loves funny Sims. So he'll get along great with other funny Sims, but obviously if Sims are argumentative, he's not gonna like them very much. And apparently Sims now have these like compatibility scores, and if they've got a high compatibility, it's easier for them to get along, so they build friendship faster. And if they have a low compatibility, it's harder to build relationship. Also important to note, apparently compatibility is completely platonic, so like any Sims can be compatible. It's not a romance thing, like kids can be compatible and stuff. It just has to do with the green bar, not the pink one. Apparently these compatibility things are determined by Sims traits, their other likes and dislikes, and also some of their lifestyles if you've got Snowy Escape. One of the examples they gave was how homebody Sims like to stay home and pursue like calm and laid back things. And so Sims that have the bookworm, clumsy, or socially awkward traits might be homebodies. If you like knitting, you might be a homebody. They apparently try to tie in a lot of cross-pack compatibility with this, and their whole point was to try and deepen Sims' social relationships, because it kind of like changes how you interact with Sims based on your compatibility with them. I wish that I could like answer questions better on this, but really I'm just directly repeating what they said in the stream, so I don't have all the answers yet. But looking at some of this, it says liking idealist Sims means other Sims with traits like creative, art lover, or music lover will gain some compatibility with your Sim. However, traits like genius will lower compatibility with your Sim. So there's sort of like some conflicting characteristics going on. I don't know. I'm really curious to see how this works though, because it seems like this is gonna really change how you build relationships. And then on top of Sim characteristics, they're also adding this new conversation topics category. So Sim characteristics is like what kinds of Sims your Sim gets along with, and then conversation topics is what sort of things your Sim likes to talk about. Some of the examples here are affection, arguments, complaints, compliments, deception. So when you pick these, you're saying whether or not your Sim would like another Sim to use these types of interactions on them. So for example, Kara likes arguments, so it sounds like she would enjoy if you came up and tried to argue with her, but she doesn't like affection, so she probably wouldn't respond that well to any sort of affectionate interactions. I'm wondering if that means like maybe if grandma tries to hug her, she'd be like, whoa, no, please don't do that. But if her sibling tried to argue, she would be totally down for it. This is really interesting too, because they were talking about how Sims are gonna have sort of diverse sets of likes and dislikes here, so it's gonna really change how you try to interact with people. You're obviously gonna have to try and learn like, oh no, that one doesn't like mischief, so you know, avoid that, but they do really like complaining, so try and complain more. There's also like jokes, malicious interactions, potty humor, pranks, small talk, all as options. And so from my understanding, these two things combined are sort of how this new social compatibility thing works. Moving on from cast though, this is the new world. It's called San Sequoia, and there are 12 lots. There's 9 finished built built lots and 3 empty ones. I actually built 3 of them, and I think I can tell you which ones now because they showed off 2 in the stream. I built this one down here, which is a starter home. I also built the new lot type, the rec center over here, and I may have built this one, but they haven't talked about that one yet, so I probably should keep my mouth shut. So this one actually is one of the houses that I built, and they played in it in the whole stream. They did change it a lot, though. Obviously, I built a starter home, and they're trying to show off like all of the new gameplay content, so they added loads of things everywhere. Mine was a lot emptier, obviously, because I had budget limitations. I told you I built a blue Suburban. When I was given the chance, I took it, and this is what I made with it. Kind of going back to compatibility again for a second, you can see here in the relationship menu these little puzzle piece icons. These puzzle pieces show off what kind of compatibility the Sims have with each other. So Ron and his wife have amazing compatibility. It says, like 2 perfect pieces of a puzzle, these Sims just click. Based on their preferences, they have the highest level of compatibility. Whereas like with his daughter, because they sort of conflicted a little bit, they had a lower compatibility. Obviously, you can see that in the relationship panel. This is the relationship that the daughter Kara has with her dad Ron. So they have bad compatibility, they have a difficult relationship. But up here, you might be noticing something kind of interesting because Ron has 4 traits. In this pack, they're adding in the ability to earn new traits through gameplay. They're calling them self-discovery traits, and with this, your Sims can have up to 6 traits, and it'll happen through a pop-up in-game. So to give an example, say maybe your Sim maxes the fitness skill, it might give you a pop-up that's like, hey, your Sim's been working out a lot. Do you want to earn the active trait? And then you can say yes or no to that. And apparently it can also offer to change your traits. So maybe you have a slob Sim, but they've been cleaning a lot. The game might be like, hey, your actions recently sort of sound like a neat Sim. Do you want to be neat? And then it would switch the trait out. Again, this is like a thing you can say yes or no to, but I really love the idea of that, of like gameplay affecting how my Sim turns out. That seems to be a major theme of this whole pack. Like your gameplay and your actions as Sims are growing up and changing really affects how they are, and also really deeply affects their relationships. When they called this pack growing together, they weren't kidding. Based on the stream, I feel like there's 2 pillars of this. It's like growing up and how your Sim grows and changes, and family relationships and like deepening relationships. So growing and together. Name kind of checks out. Okay, I have a really long list of things to get through now, so I'm just gonna try and go over some of my favorites. They're adding a bunch of new social interactions that are different between age groups. So for example, elders have some new interactions with kids. They can like sneak them treats, say they're their favorite. There's a new family kiss interaction. There's some new interactions that kids can do with toddlers. Toddlers can kick people. So there's a bunch of new social stuff. They've also reorganized the pie menu to make it easier to find interactions. So what I mean by that is you can see how these categories now underneath friendly have like interests, affection, complaints, compliments, to make it easier for you to know how you're interacting with Sims. I'm really glad they did this because we were starting to get so many interactions. It's gonna be nice to have them like separated a little bit more, because then I won't be like clicking more choices, more choices, more choices like 10 times to see all of them. Oh, here's an example of those family dynamics happening in game. So you can set this in cast, or you could get a pop-up like this where it's trying to suggest like, oh, maybe grandma and the kid have a strict dynamic, and then you can choose again yes or no here. The next major thing I want to show you is the new temporary stay feature. So this is sort of an extreme example, but in the live stream, they had this pop-up from your boy Kyle, who basically just invited himself over to come and stay for a long time. Obviously, you can say yes or no. In the stream, they chose to say yes, and then Kyle Kyleson showed up and spent 6 days staying at the family home. I feel that Kyle might quickly become one of the most iconic townies they've made in a while. It feels very similar to like the immediate love for Greg that the community had, but in this case, it's Kyle. So he just shows up with his suitcase and he stays in the house. Apparently you can like ask him to help out, and they did, so he was like helping care for the baby and stuff. I think Kyle is a rather extreme example of this because they said that you can also choose to invite Sims over. So if you wanted to, you could like call up your sister who lives in a different household and ask her to come stay, and you can pick the length of the stay, so it can be from like 1 to 6 days. They gave the example that maybe your Sim just had a new baby, so they invite their parents to come and stay for a few days to help out around the house. And it's really cool because the Sim will stay there for the set duration of time, time. If you've got an extra bed, you can set them to sleep in that bed, but if you don't, they'll just use a sleeping bag and they'll bring that themselves so you don't have to worry about it. I'm looking at my notes and getting overwhelmed with how many more things I have to tell you about, but I think the next like main meat of the pack is milestones. So they've added this new milestone feature that works for all age groups, and basically the idea is to like track major events in your Sims lives as they grow up. So starting off when you've got an infant, those milestones might be things like sitting up or rolling over or reaching. And what I think is one of the coolest things about this entire pack is that your infant can't do stuff until they've reached that milestone. So if your infant hasn't learned how to sit up, they can't sit in the high chair yet, but then once they do, they can sit in the high chair and learn how to try foods. Although I guess they need to have the grab milestone to be able to hold the food first. I don't know, it's just really cool. It feels like your sim actually has to grow up and like learn how to exist. So infants will have like fine motor milestones, they'll have like social milestones, they have some first milestones. Toddlers will have like a learn to walk or get potty trained milestone. Kids might have like a learn to ride bike or lost first tooth milestone. Adults have loads of them too for major events in their lives, things like getting married, first woohoo, first fire. At one point, one of the adults had a bladder failure. He peed his pants and he got like first bladder failure milestone. And it even says in the milestone panel where it happened. So he like remembers that he had a bladder failure on this lot, which unfortunately happens to be his house. And occasionally he'll get embarrassed when he visits this lot and like remembers that he peed his pants there. Again, really unfortunate because he lives here. And I think that there's like some collectible objects that you can get alongside milestones. So like when the sim loses their first tooth, they get a certificate from the tooth fairy. Babies can get little baby handprints and you can like put them up on the wall. It's framed. It's really adorable. Here's kind of an example of what that milestone menu looks like. So for the infant, we can see some of the ones that were missing, but they just got the roll over milestone. The adult menu has some more. You can see like some of the first, like first fire, first job. And when you press this view milestones button, you can see it all in chronological order for their entire life. I am so glad that they're trying to implement like more of a memories system almost. This is just gonna be so cool for legacy gameplay. One of the other major gameplay things though is what they're calling quirks, and these are for infants and toddlers. They've added 18 new quirks each to both of those life states, and each sim will have 3 random quirks that you have to figure out through gameplay. The ones that the infant had in the stream were hates wake up time, loves being held, and frequently sneezes. So these quirks might kind of affect gameplay. So like Leo, because he hates wake up time, is going to be kind of grumpy when he wakes up, and because he loves being held, he'll be a lot happier when he's being held. And I think the sneezes one just is like an animation thing. He's probably just going to sneeze a lot. I only saw one toddler one, but the toddler was aggressive, which I assume means they probably like kick people and throw things. So these different quirks are really going to impact the baby's behaviors and like how they interact with Sims. They make every child kind of different, and it really impacts how you have to raise them. They gave the example that a Sim might prefer to sleep while being held, which sounds like a nightmare, but apparently is a thing that can happen. And because there's 18, like 18 for infants and 18 for toddlers, and they're different, that means that every time you have a kid, they're probably gonna be really different because they're basically getting like 3 random bonus traits. So your sim might have triplets and like all 3 babies are completely different because they have all different quirks. And then you sort of have to care for them differently because of it. I can't tell if I love this or if I'm like absolutely terrified of this, but it seems really interesting. There is a bunch of new stuff for adults too, and they were kind of joking in the stream about how most of the adult stuff is like bad because they added a lot of more opportunities for drama basically. So we have new midlife crisis options. Sims can get fired randomly now. This was interesting. The sim got a workplace rival. Apparently Bella Goth is always getting in the way, and I guess you can't get promoted until you resolve your issues with the workplace rival, and you can do that by like talking to them, I guess. But they also said that you could eliminate them. I don't know if they were joking about that or not, but there was a serious suggestion that you should kill your workplace rival. Kind of worrying. It makes me wonder what's going on behind the scenes at The Sims, but okay. Here's kind of the example of the midlife crisis menu. I don't really understand how it works and like when they get it and what the pop-up would be like, but from what they told us, it sounds like there's 4 different kinds. This is the desire for adventure one, and so to end his midlife crisis faster, we can try and complete this, and then we won't have the negative effects of the midlife crisis. I don't really know what those negative effects are. They didn't show off midlife crisis that much, but it exists, so that's interesting. There's a bunch more things for kids as well. They actually changed it so that kids can gain certain adult skills now, not just the kids' skills. So things like piano, knitting, stuff like that that kids can already do, they can start building as a child. They'll build it at a slower pace than an adult would, but if you like had your sim sim play piano their whole childhood. Right now, they wouldn't gain any piano skill. They'd like age up into a teen and then have to learn all over again. But after this comes out, you'll be able to actually learn piano when you're young. There's a bunch of new kids bikes that you can ride, and they actually have to be taught how to ride them, which is kind of cool. There's a whole losing teeth feature with the tooth fairy. You can also make friendship bracelets and exchange them. There's a new treehouse, which is super cool. It seems like this treehouse is going to be kind of similar to the rocket ship, how like you need a bunch of sims to work on building it and spend some time on it. And then you can also add in upgrades, but in this case, the upgrades are like a slide and stuff like that. Then once it's done, you can choose to decorate it, and you can also slot some items onto it. They showed off how a few kids' toys like Blarfy and the activity table, you can like drag them up here and place them in this corner, and it actually works. I think you can also place like a telescope there. So there's a few items that slot right here and still function up there. Obviously kids can play here, but any sim can come up to the top of the treehouse. You can see dads climbing the ladder, and adult sims can woohoo in the treehouse. I am taking way too long to describe all of this. I'm gonna try and be fast. They also mentioned a few new events that they're adding. They didn't actually show any of these off, but there's 3 new parties that you can throw. There's a slumber party, a baby shower, and a family reunion. There's also this cool little keepsake box item, and I think that you can store family keepsakes in it. So things like maybe your sim's birth certificate, there's marriage certificates now, maybe the tooth fairy thing, or any little items, you can stick them in the keepsake box just for like easy storage. And there's kind of some gameplay tied to it where like the keeper of the keepsake box can pass it down to someone and stuff like that. One of my favorite things they showed is the new movie theater. This isn't actually a lot that you can visit. You can't like go in there and like sit in there with your sim. It's a rabbit hole. But there is a movie theater now, and your sims can come here and like click on it to see a film. There is a bunch of options, and the titles are all kind of funny. They're also quite cheap. It's 15 simoleons. They mentioned how some sims might dislike certain movies based on their traits. So they'll have like a real reaction to it. So if a sim maybe dislikes children, they might hate a kid's movie. And listen, this might be a rabbit hole. They might just go in there and then come out when the movie is done, but I don't care, because to me, this is so nostalgic. We had a thing like this in The Sims 3, like you could go to the theater on a date and stuff, and it was the same thing where it just was like in there, and they would go in there and then leave. But it was so cute, and this takes me back. This is so fun to me. They also showed off these new splash pads that we're getting, and you can actually build these at home. We're getting a bunch of items like these little splash pad thingies, and you can make your own custom ones like in your backyard, or you could come here and then play in this one. Apparently dogs can even come here, like all ages can use this. And then they also showed off the new lot type, which is the rec center, and I actually built this one. Basically the rec center is like a huge catch-all lot. You can do like pretty much anything here. These are the new puzzle tables. Your sims can like play games on these. I have like a little kids play area back there. There's a cafeteria. This lot has a gym and an art room and a music room. There's computers, like there's literally everything on this lot. It was really hard to build, but I think that it turned out really well. I think they were kind of running out of time at this point, so they didn't get into it too much, but they did show off some of the puzzles. It seems really cute, and I think you can also like make a puzzle from reference and like make a puzzle based on a picture you've taken. Sims can also be kind of mischievous and like steal a puzzle piece and stuff like that. Okay, I think that might be all I wanted to tell you about. I'm definitely missing some things. I didn't cover everything they talked about, and even they didn't cover everything, so the pack has a lot that we haven't seen yet. After seeing that live stream and hearing them talk about all these things, I am really, really excited. I feel like this pack is gonna have a lot of stuff that's really gonna like deepen Sims relationships and like really help with family gameplay. I mean, you all know that I pretty much only play legacy challenges. I've got some Sims on my Twitch channel that I've been playing with for 16 generations. So like all of this milestone gameplay and like relationship gameplay and family dynamic stuff is really, really exciting to me. This is like dream come true kind of stuff, so I'm hoping the pack is as good as it seems when it actually comes out. If you want to go back and watch that full live stream so you can hear and see everything for yourself, I'm gonna have that link down below. And hopefully soon I'll get early access so we can start posting some early access content and like actually playing with it. So if you're curious to see some more of this pack, feel free to subscribe so you don't miss that. The first early access video that I'm gonna post, and I'll post it literally as soon as I'm allowed to, is like a behind the scenes video on how I made all of the 3 lots that I built for this pack. So you'll get a lot of like behind the scenes super early footage that's actually really interesting. At least I hope it's interesting. But I think on that note, I'm gonna end this video right here. So thank you for watching. I'm curious to hear what is most exciting to you in the comments down below. I definitely missed some stuff and like didn't show it all, so bear with me. There was just a lot. I had 5 pages of notes typed. They were just like throwing content at us the whole time. It was a lot. But anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye, everybody. I had to pee really bad, so I left my PC for like 2 seconds, and I'm pretty sure I missed them talking about a deadly alligator, by the way. So if you know anything about that, can you tell me in the comments?